The rise of the High Elves from First Dominion to the Great Vortex. Before the world had an empire, before dwarfs carved their mountain halls, the High Elves already ruled a civilization older than history. They arrived upon the island continent of Ulthuan when the world was still raw, scarred by chaos, unstable, and unfinished. Where other races struggled to survive, the elves reshaped the land itself, raising white towers, binding magic into stone, and bending the winds of magic to their will. For a time, they were unmatched. They explored the world, founded colonies, and acted as stewards of balance. But chaos was not gone, only wounded. The polar gates collapsed completely, and demonic tides began to drown reality. The elves fought, and they lost. Badly. The demon wars nearly ended them. Entire cities fell. Magic ran wild. Even elven mastery proved insufficient. That was when the High Elves made their most dangerous decision. Rather than fight chaos, they would bleed it out of the world. Led by Kalidor Dragontama, the greatest mage in elven history, they created a spell so vast it bordered on godhood. At Ulthuan's heart, they raised a magical engine designed to siphon chaos itself from reality. The Great Vortex was born. It worked. Demons were torn back into the warp. The world stabilized. The High Elves survived. But the victory came with a sentence. The Vortex required eternal maintenance. Thousands of mages were bound to it for life. Ulthuan became the anchor of the world, and the elves its prisoners. From that moment on, the High Elves were no longer merely a people. They were the custodians of reality. And that belief, more than chaos itself, would one day destroy them.
The world was irrevocably shattered by ambition and pride. The seeds of this cataclysm were sown when the Phoenix throne of Ulthuan was denied to Malekith, a warrior and mage of unparalleled might, spurned and consumed by bitterness. And at the heart of the world, a swirling, chaotic vortex of raw power was born, a maelstrom that drank the clouds from the sky and the light from the sun. The world screamed in its death throes. Gigantic tidal waves, summoned by the vortex's pull, surged inland, swallowing magnificent coastal cities whole and drowning millennia of history beneath the churning waves. The continent itself could not withstand the strain. With a symphony of grinding rock and thunderous earthquakes, the landmass of Ulthuan cracked and splintered. Vast chunks of the island sank into the raging ocean, while volcanoes erupted, spewing ash and fire into the darkened skies. Amidst the chaos, countless elves fled in terror, their cries lost in the roar of their world being torn apart. As the dust began to settle on a broken land, Malekith and his followers, now the Dark Elves, departed upon massive floating cities called Black Arcs, leaving their ravaged homeland behind for a new, colder kingdom in the west. The Sundering's tragedies did not end there. In the aftermath, Dark Elf assassins, cloaked in the guise of their High Elf kin, orchestrated a brutal ambush, slaughtering a caravan of dwarf merchants. The dwarves, believing the High Elves responsible for this treacherous act, were consumed by a furious desire for vengeance. Their High King, Gotrek Starbreaker, in an act of ultimate insult, personally shaved the beards of the High Elf ambassadors sent to his court and sent them back in shame. This ignited the devastating War of Vengeance. For centuries, brutal battles raged across the now ruined landscapes, a grim montage of axe and spear. The war reached its tragic climax when the High Elf King, Kalidor II, was slain in a ferocious battle, and the dwarves seized his phoenix crown as a bitter trophy. Centuries of conflict left both empires as hollow shells of their former glory. The once great kingdoms of the High Elves and dwarfs were diminished, their magnificent cities now little more than haunting ruins and echoes of a golden age. Isolated on their fractured island of Ulthuan, the High Elves stood in grim defiance, a stoic, dwindling people eternally defending their shores from the ceaseless tide of their enemies. Their glorious past a painful memory, the dwarfs retreated to their mountain holds, their hearts filled with grudges, their great halls growing silent. Yet, even in the deepest twilight, a new dawn can break. Far from the battlefields and ruins, in the peaceful High Elf city of Ulthuan, a glimmer of hope was born, a stark contrast to the ages of destruction. Here, under the watchful eyes of the Ever-Queen, twin infants were born into a world of shadow. They were named Tyrion and Teclis, two souls destined to shape the future, representing a fragile yet defiant new hope for the elven race and for the world itself.
Tyrion and Teclis are central figures in the expansive lore of Warhammer fantasy, particularly within the narrative of the High Elves. Their birth marks a significant event in this universe, signifying the dawn of two legendary heroes destined to shape the fate of Ulthuan and beyond. Tyrion is the martial champion and embodiment of the High Elven warrior spirit, known for his unmatched prowess with the sword and his leadership on the battlefield. Teclis, in contrast, is revered as one of the greatest sorcerers to ever exist, wielding arcane powers that are pivotal in many of the High Elves' greatest victories. The simultaneous birth of these twin brothers, blessed by the elven god Isha, signifies not only hope and strength for the High Elves, but also foreshadows the immense challenges and treacheries that lie ahead. The significance of Tyrion and Teclis in the Warhammer universe cannot be overstated. Their roles are integral in the storyline that guides the fate of the High Elf civilization, often depicted in epic battles and deep political intrigue. This narrative introduces the audience to concepts of destiny, power, and the duality of strength and wisdom, which are thematic cornerstones in fantasy storytelling. For example, Tyrion's leadership in the battle against the Dark Elves showcases his strategic brilliance and the fierce protective instinct he holds for his kin. Meanwhile, Teclis' mastery of magic plays a crucial role in defending Ulthuan from chaotic invasions, reflecting the indispensable reliance of the High Elves on both might and magic for survival. There are poignant opinions within the community that elevate the status of Tyrion and Teclis, viewing them as quintessential representations of heroism and sacrifice in fantasy lore. However, some perspectives suggest an underlying commentary on the burdens of prophecy and expectation, presenting the twins as tragic figures compelled to fulfill roles imprinted upon them by their lineage and society's needs.
From the birth of Tyrion and Teclis to the end of the world. The twins. Tyrion and Teclis were born beneath ill omens in Ulthuan. From the moment they drew breath, prophecy clung to them like a curse. Tyrion was everything the High Elves revered, physically perfect, instinctively lethal, a born warrior whose presence inspired loyalty and fear in equal measure. Teclis was the opposite, frail, sickly, racked by seizures and weakness. Yet behind his failing body burned a mind capable of shaping magic itself. The twins were opposites, sword and spell, strength and intellect, and together they were dangerous. Teclis would become the greatest mage since Kalidor Dragontamer. Unlike most High Elves, he rejected arrogance. He understood that magic was not a weapon to dominate with, but a force that demanded restraint. It was Teclis who traveled to the lands of men and taught them how to safely wield magic, creating the imperial colleges and preventing humanity from annihilating itself through chaos corruption. This single act delayed the apocalypse by centuries, and the High Elves barely acknowledged Tyrion became the greatest warrior of his age, wielding the blade Sunfang and defending Ulthuan from invasion after invasion. He also fell in love with the Ever-Queen Aenarion, avatar of the goddess Isha. This bond made Tyrion more than a hero. It made him a symbol, and symbols break the hardest for millennia. The High Elves believed Malekith to be a failed pretender, burned by the flames of Aenarion for being unworthy. This was a lie. During the end times, the truth was revealed. Malekith was the rightful Phoenix King. The flames had never rejected him. They had tried to purge the corruption placed upon him by others, and the priests, afraid of what he represented, declared him unworthy instead. The entire High Elf civilization was built on that lie. As chaos closed in and Ulthuan began to die, Tyrion did what Aenarion had done before him. He drew the sword of Cain. The god of murder claimed him instantly. Tyrion became unstoppable, slaughtering demons, dark elves, and allies alike. The hero became a monster wearing the skin of a savior. And this time, there was no victory at the end of the blade. Teclis realized the final truth too late. The Great Vortex was no longer saving the world. It was prolonging its suffering. In an act of grim mercy, Teclis dismantled the vortex, unleashing chaos fully, but removing the lie that the world could be preserved as it was. Ulthuan sank beneath the sea. The High Elves ceased to exist as a people. At the world's end, Malekith walked once more into the flames of Aenarion. This time, he did not burn. He emerged reborn, no longer Witch King, no longer exile. He became Phoenix King at last, ruler of all elves, not through conquest, not through pride, but through endurance. The end times, chaos won. The world broke. Gods died. Continents shattered. Reality collapsed into fire, madness, and oblivion. Tyrion died enslaved to Cain. Teclis died knowing the truth. Malekith ruled only long enough to watch everything burn. The old world ended. From the ashes, fragments of souls survived. Tyrion, Teclis, Malekith.
Welcome to the Grimdark Codex. This channel is my personal chronicle, where I deep dive into the lore of my favorite fantasy universes. We're starting with Warhammer 40k and Warhammer Fantasy, but that's just the beginning. In time, we may journey into the worlds of Brandon Sanderson, George R.R. Martin, and beyond. And who knows, maybe even some Let's Plays to bring these grim tales to life. If you love rich lore, ancient wars, doomed heroes, and galaxies teetering on the edge of chaos, you're in the right place. Subscribe, like the video, and ring the bell, so you never miss an entry in the Codex, because in this grimdark future, the lore is endless and the war never ends.